To call this meeting of the Finance Committee on July 29th to order at 4:00 p.m. Could you do any of the necessary opening statements, please?
Sure. So as the chairwoman said, it's 4 o'clock on July 29th, 2026, and this is the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Finance will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or file a complaint, please contact Christina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at JMARCZAK, capecod.gov, call 508-375-6646, or visit capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and all that information is available on the website. You do want a roll call, right, Mr. Chair?
I was going to call for a roll call right now.
Okay. Believe that first we've Deputy Speaker Frizzell.
Here.
Delegate Gallagher.
Here.
Vice Chair Killian.
Here.
Chair Oman.
Here.
Delegate O'Malley.
Here.
Are you there? All right, and that's everyone, Mr. Chair.
That's
and I think the
everyone.
only thing
Great.
on the agenda is we've got a discussion regarding this potential resolution to be submitted to the full assembly of delegates by the Standing Committee on Finance, recommending guidelines to the Board of Regional Commissioners to be issued to the regional administrator for the preparation of the proposed fiscal year 2028 operating and capital budgets under Home Rule Charter sections 5-2 and 5-6. Over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. This is the only item on the agenda, and we've gone through this numerous times, and it is very long and very well written so far, in my own estimation. But I'm going to open up the discussion to see what the members of the Finance Committee think that this is going to do. Can I ask one question though, Mr. Clerk, before I kick anybody? Mr. Clerk,
Sure.
did this go to the administration and to the administrator?
Oh, it did, and to the board and to most county staff. So we're very transparent over here, but they did get a copy, and I did receive word from the administrator. He may have a conflict today. He thought he might be available for the beginning of the meeting, so hopefully we'll get him. He did express a willingness to work with you and hopefully have you work with the commissioners on this resolution. So.
Okay,
Not sure
but
if he's
no comments other than the willingness to participate. Okay,
no
thank you.
specific comments yet. No.
Well, let's start out with Delegate O'Malley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I would say overall, the one thing that kind of jumps out at me on reviewing the red line here is that what has happened is a lot of the more alarmist, sort of slightly inflammatory language has been toned down, and I think that's apropos. I don't think we want to be, crying wolf here too badly. I go along with that. I think the other two major areas. One is the language at the very end that relates to grants, and I think we've talked about that so many times. I don't think there's likely to be any. Come on. Well, it's enlarged itself. I don't think there's likely to be a lot of dispute about tracking those grant monies individually in department budgets. And finally, the piece, it was my edit to add in a section about Children's Cove to at least remind ourselves that in the big picture, that is a sort of $650,000 budget line that we carry that we all recognize we have very little to say about that department. And given that the department is in fact serving the Cape and the islands, which is the DA office's jurisdiction, that we ought to stay focused and talk to our delegation about the prospects of getting some further support through that route. I'll leave it with that. I have no objections to anything I've seen.
And that was section 3, that dash 2. I like that. I like that, the way it was written. And it does start to put some focus on what our non-essential departments are. And that's really good. Deputy Speaker Friesel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of things. Following while we're on that point, I want to talk about it anyway, Children's Cove. While I understand our insertion of that, I mean, some other departments may, or it may be thought of that we're just picking on this. Maybe where it's placed in the resolution, we might want to say, you know, for example. So it's given as one indication of something where there's a need to focus on, you know, what's essential, what's not essential, and some of the impact something which may not be essential is having on the budget. It's placed where it's placed. I'm not sure whether we're making it clear why we're inserting it at that point. So that's one thought I had about that addition. I also wanted to suggest another point which could be put in here. And that is when we have, let me state it this way, at the end of every fiscal year, and I'm thinking somewhere in the 60-day range, we ought to look at what the latest balance is in the unreserved general fund, undesignated balance, shall we say, and to the extent it exceeds the number 10% of the operating budget, which I think is a number previously the finance director has told us we should have, you know, in a sort of ready or reserve. To the extent it exceeds that, we should immediately recommend as a committee to the full assembly that we adopt an ordinance transferring that excess amount to one of the stabilization funds, one or more of the stabilization funds. The purpose for doing that is to put that money in a place like other stabilization funds where it takes 2/3 vote of the assembly to then move that money out and to spend that money. So that's another idea I throw out as a new guideline, if you will, that's not already here. And while I'm talking about stabilization funds, I also throw out for our thought process this afternoon whether we ought to consider consolidating some of these stabilization funds. We have 6 of them. I don't know why the general stabilization and the emergency stabilization, those monies couldn't be combined and put into one of the other ones we already have, which are the principal ones, like the Capital Stabilization Fund. And I don't know what purpose is served by having smaller balances in 2 other of these funds, as opposed to combining it with the other funds where we know we're probably going to be more likely to be looking to money to fund what we're going to do. So those are a couple of initial thoughts I have.
I like that idea. It probably is sort of like mission creep in a different way. You know, we pigeonholed everything into different civilization funds, and maybe it would be more fruitful to consolidate. That's a good question for the administration and the administrator himself. I see Delegate O'Malley again, but there's anybody else on the committee first would like to speak before we have a second round. Mr. Killian, Delegate Killian, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I will echo some of the sentiments. It's a pretty thorough document we produce, certainly more than we have in the past. One recommendation, it's a relatively minor one. It's regarding the federal and state delegation advocacy regarding PFAS, and I wonder if we should also include in that interaction with our towns, because as the point has been made before, is that the county never actually purchased any PFAS or any foam that got on the county site. It was all brought on by the town. So I think the towns have a vested interest in the county recovering the costs to mitigate this problem. And I know we've had discussions in the past with the county members that said they may bring the towns into the suit that they're engaged in because of the fact that the county didn't bring it. So my only suggestion is that we get them involved as well in advocating for the county in to recover some of these funds. I think if every board of selectmen or town manager was putting the same kind of pressure on the state delegation, the federal delegation, we will be able to speak with a louder voice, and maybe it'll help. But certainly, they should have a hand in this effort.
That starts with communication. That we should involve the towns. Recommend to
Agreed.
involve the towns in it. Okay.
Yep, no, I agree. And it's a question of whether we do it at the assembly level, that each member decides to engage with their town manager. I'd certainly be willing to do that. Or it's something that we encourage the county administrator to do, whomever, however we choose to do it. I think it's an important part of what we're going to do. Obviously we're talking about trying to get some funding from the state or federal level, but I think their help with that would certainly move things along. With 15 towns requesting it, with the delegation, we might get a little more action on it.
And one town has 5 fire districts, so it's not just 15 members. So very good. Delegate O'Malley, you're next.
Well, I would start to say by saying I entirely agree with Delegate Killian's perspective, and I would encourage him to draft at least a section that puts some language around this. Clearly, this is one of the hugest liabilities that we have, and it plays a substantial part in the debt burden we face. The budgetary burden we face over the next half a dozen years. So yes, I certainly think we ought to at least express ourselves, whether it does anything or not. I think it's important that we put ourselves out on the record with our delegation, that they understand this is a problem not entirely of our creation. It was created literally by the towns bringing that material aboard. And there ought to be some sort of shared sharing of that cleanup. What I was going to say was in response to Delegate Frizel's observations about the Children's Cove. And the reason I suggested putting it there is because I see Children's Cove as not a core program. In the way that the Police Training Academy was not a core county program. It was really not very much under our control. It was very peripheral, and we were supporting it. So that's why the placement. But I entirely agree with his thought that that line might, this is in section 3.2, might begin by saying, for example, Children's Cove. I think that's right. I don't want to see ourselves really picking on them, but that's a kind of a glaring example, and so I would agree with that, Ed.
Well, thank you for that. Is there any particular language that exists now? I've underlined every time we said recommend, because that is really our job, is to recommend. We don't formulate the budget. We recommend that this is done, and we've done. I think this is a very thorough job and a very exhaustive task for the administration to consider, because there's a lot of moving parts there, and right all the way through this 8-page document. I'm sure it'll be shrunk to less than 8 pages when we get through the double spacing. But anyway, it's remarkable how many things we've come up with that could really help the longevity and financial stability of Barnstable County. And I really appreciate the hard work that's been done on this, and the softening of the language too. Deputy Speaker Frizel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things that I commented on, and my comments are in the margin, and I'd like us to focus on just to see if there are some further thoughts by members of the committee. On page 7, and it's on line 118, we mentioned that we use the term regional environmental coordination. And I just throw out for our thought process here, do we think that is kind of understood what we mean by that? Or do we have to get that more defined in order to get the point across? So that was one area where I wasn't sure whether we needed to add a little more language to more define what we're talking about in environmental coordination.
I, I I must say I'm not seeing the same thing on the same lines with my copy.
Okay, if you go to page, section 3, right at the very
Yep,
beginning
section three.
of section 3, focus on core regional services. The Assembly recommends that the Board direct the administration to prioritize programs that offer essential scaled regional value to Cape Cod's 15 towns, such as regional procurement, dredging, and regional environmental coordination. The term regional environmental coordination, are we being clear enough as to what we mean by regional environmental coordination?
Good point. That is something that I had not noticed. But so there are we could go back and find out exactly what we do for regional coordination, other than the dredge. Go right down and buying, regional buying. Those are big things, and I don't think in the dredge we do collect fees, but I know if they commensurate with the entire package of what it costs us to do that, especially the uploading and downloading of equipment, the travel time and everything like that. We might want to be a little more specific about how we can recover costs that are in general not stated in the dredging program too. So that's very thought-provoking. Thank you very much. Who I see Dr. O'Malley again. Go ahead.
Sorry, Chair.
Go get him.
Speaking to that issue that Delegate Freisel has raised, I don't see that without a sense, a listing of all of our regional environmental partners. Obviously comes to mind the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, but there are across the Cape a host of organizations with whom we coordinate, through some of them through the commission, and some of them directly. We hear from the APCC every year. I think the sense of that is to me is clear enough that is a core mission for us to do, to coordinate with any regional organization, agency that is directing towards environmental protection and preservation. So I'm comfortable with that language.
As stated in section 3-1, you're all okay with that as stated?
Correct, in 3-1, and regional environmental coordination. I think that stands adequately on its own.
That's your point. Deputy Speaker Freisel, please.
Yeah, thank you. So, I raise it because I want to hear what other people have to say about it, okay? I think that we do a lot of work without talking about other organizations. The regional government does a lot of work in the environmental area. I guess I was wondering if it's conveying what the government of Barnstable County is doing. And I see the clerk has raised his hands, and I was going to ask what the clerk had in mind when he used that language in this draft, actually.
So I'll turn it over to Clerk Fletcher, please.
Nothing other than to be as broad as possible, that we probably need to coordinate on environmental issues, given that we have a sole source aquifer, and that's one of the main things that we do. But language was meant to be pretty broad. I was actually raising my hand because I did just change the number so they restart every page. Just keep in mind it's slippery. So like if I were to add another sentence, it'll shift the line numbers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's kind of why it's a living document. If you print it out and you printed it out and someone added more stuff afterwards, the line numbers will shift.
Yeah,
just letting you know. So, but
I'm a victim.
if you refer to the sections, or if you have the actual document itself open, and as you go forward in this conversation, just let me know if you want me to put it on the screen later, if it's necessary.
No, I think we can find it if we go by section and subsection. Then we can come to any point we need to without further ado.
All right, just offering.
That's great. Thank you. Deputy Speaker Frizel, you're on. You're up.
Yep. So, if people are satisfied that that kind of expresses what we're talking about, environmental issues, fine. I know this is not intended to be, a listing and starting to be too much in the weeds here and too granular. But I want to just throw out again, just for our thinking, to make sure we thought about it and said, yeah, it works. If you go into the number 2, review of non-core programs, I added a margin comment there as well. There we state the Assembly recommends that the board direct the administration to scrutinize programs that fall outside typical regional scopes. All right. So are we all, if someone sat down and said, well, what do you think of typical regional scopies? We'd all be able to point to it? I mean, what's that?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I have 2 hands up now. Oh, and if your hand is up, I'm recognizing you.
It's not meant to be up. I just didn't throw it down. I apologize.
Okay.
Oh.
I noticed that Administrator Dutton is online right now, so I don't necessarily want you to jump in on anything, Administrator, but really thoroughly thought this out, and I know it came over to you, and I know it's quite a list of things, but every one of them has a potential of helping us to financial stability in the coming years, actually. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about some or all of the recommendations. And remember, they're just recommendations. The ball is in the administration's court, not ours at this point. But we're all in the same boat. We're trying to maintain fiscal sanity for the county going forward, and there's some daunting things in other parts of the state that there's crisis going on because of that, and we want to avoid that at all costs for the taxpayers of Boston County. Any thoughts?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to sort of comment. I did read through the draft. I think it's great. I think it gives the commissioners a little bit of input as they also me draft the sort of the budget and then the budget message prior to that. So I definitely appreciate that. I think I would sort of pick up on something that Delegate Frizel sort of mentioned, just in terms of what are regional services. And it's something that came up. I had a conversation with the Board of Regional Commissioners chair this morning on other issues. And we were talking about the upcoming election, and it occurred to me, well, the budget that we will be working on was going to be reviewed and passed, hopefully, by a fairly different looking assembly of delegates. You're going to have 4 or 5 potentially more new delegates. So my only sort of request would be just think about tying the hands of the next assembly body that's coming up. I know that is not what the resolution does, but I don't want it to. I certainly wouldn't want it to appear that the current board is trying to tie the hands of the future board, and that's something that that's sort of the political side of it that I don't try to manage whatsoever. But just keep that in mind. In terms of the resolution itself, as I say, I thought it was very thoughtful, very good. It gives us a good direction, and to the extent that resolution could possibly lead to actually some sort of joint resolution with the assembly and the commissioners. I think that would put us in a very strong position to implement a budget process that everybody was on board with. Certainly, my intent would be to come back and meet as many of those objectives as possible that you've outlined in the resolution. But ultimately, it's the commissioners that come up with and vote on sort of the initial budget direction for the department heads and me. So, but I certainly would encourage them to sort of incorporate most of what you're talking about, if not all. So those are my quick comments.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, one of the things I'm looking to avoid until we get all of the information from your two studies is changing the compensation package. I'd like to know exactly where we stand compensation package wise, and you've got a study that's doing that. Do you have any idea when that might be completed?
I don't have a precise date or anticipated date at this point. My hope and my expectation is we can get that wrapped up prior to our really beginning the budget process. So this is not intended to be a long drawn out process. It shouldn't be. I don't think it will be, but my objective is to get it done so that we can incorporate any alterations, any changes that may be necessary in the upcoming budget. And I'm not, quite frankly, I'm not anticipating a lot of changes, but there may be some.
Not changes in compensation, you mean, so total compensation packages, the various things that we mentioned in this
Right. Right. I'm not
resolution.
anticipating, I guess my point is I'm not anticipating, any kind of significant increase in overall salary based on the study. But
We'll have to see. I mean, I think it's a very attractive package personally. You know, when you look at the commercial world, a lot of the stuff that's in it just doesn't exist. You know, but I also, you have to pay pay your staff and your workers commensurately, or else you lose them to another sector. And no one's walking through the door. No one's driving to Cape Cod. And I think I think I just read that the average price of a home in Orleans is now $1.2 million. I don't know what they're going to do for the next teacher and what out there, but there's a lot of compensation is very important. It's a very big touchstone for the staff. This is public document. They can read that too and say, oh boy, and I'm sure that they're more aware of what's going on here in this venue than anyone else. So I want to assure the staff that we don't want to short shrift them on their compensation, but we also want to make sure that we know how the county has to. Oh, they won't have a job if the county doesn't exist anymore. So we have that. That's a balance that has to be done. But I think the last thing I want to talk about personally right now in this short term is compensation. I want to know what we can do to assure that they have fair compensation going forward for many years. That's my goal. So thank you for that.
appreciate that.
For the rest of the board, what's our next move? Do we want to tweak this again through our chair? Oh, I see Deputy Speaker Frizzell.
Well, just my thought would be that we incorporate these comments that we've had today into a new draft and hopefully take it up in 2 weeks and vote on it as a recommendation to the full assembly.
Yeah.
And it would be teed up for then the first meeting in September. That was our original plan. And seemed like a good plan to me, but certainly open to other ideas on that.
Thank you. I know Director Dutton's talked about the next assembly, and that's neither here nor there for me. Right now, we have a very experienced assembly. We have the same finance committee will probably be in place next term. So that leadership quality will not change, and we can only surmise what might happen with the new members coming on board. So, but I think that we should do our job. That it's July of our second year of this term, and it's our job to try to make sure that as a finance committee we do everything we can for the long-term financial stability of the county, and I think that's what we're doing.
I would point out too, Mr. Chair, that it's in light of new membership, and that always happens every 2 years, or it happens often. And this is a resolution that isn't once and forever and can't be amended if we see that there's some things
Yeah.
that ought to change in this resolution down the road. It's not frozen in time. It's a living, working document. And it may very well get amended down the road for certain reasons, and that's possible.
Yeah. But it's a good starting point to try
Yeah.
to say, how are we going to maintain our financial stability going forward with the predictions of the administration of Carol Coppola, saying that we're structurally in debt starting next year, and again, it's not like we're unique. As a matter of fact, I think we're gratefully behind the curve, because there are certain communities now that are not able to keep their staff at all because of the compensation package and extreme new costs that are coming up for all over the place that they can't be handled in cities. So what we're doing is suggesting very strongly what we think is the best path, or many of the best paths that we can. And I'm really appreciative that this committee has done that. Do I have anybody else that I'm missing here? No? Okay. What, with Clerk Fletcher on board here, what's the next thing? Should we ask him, or just kind of delineate individually what we want? I know that Deputy Speaker Frizel and Delegate Killian have some very specific stuff that they want to do. And I think that working with our clerk and making the last tweaks and adjustments, and then in 2 weeks, maybe vote on this and send it off to the full assembly. Delegate Killian, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I will put some language together for what I discussed and send it to the clerk and for consideration.
Good. I think that's the next move, and then let's try to wrap this up and vote on it as a committee in 2 weeks, and then from there go bring it to the assembly, and that'll give them plenty of time. It'll be well before the formal budget process is starting for 2028.
Yeah, and I'll put some language together too. I'll just point out that in 2 weeks, I think that's August the 12th, 4 o'clock, I may not be able to participate in that meeting with a conflict. I don't know whether you'd like to move it to Monday the 11th or just leave it on the 12th. Monday the 10th.
I would
rather.
value
Yeah.
your presence, sir.
Yeah. But
Is Monday the
yeah,
11th, is there a conflict for anybody else in the assembly at 4 p.m.?
Yeah, 10th, the 10th. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, Monday the 10th?
Yeah, it's the 10th. Monday's
Okay.
the 10th.
Delegate O'Malley.
Chair, I have a sort of a conflict, but I've been able to handle it. I'd be working, but I'm typically able to tune in and participate remotely in this while I'm in the gallery. But I am sitting in the gallery.
Yeah. Well,
So I think that's probably less important than Delegate Frizel's likely absence. And
I think we're all important, but Delegate Frizel has a strong voice in this and lots of experience in this venue, and we would love to take advantage of that. Delegate Gallagher.
Monday the 10th would also be better for me than Wednesday the 12th.
Oh, so we're getting almost to a consensus here. So I know the clerk is listening carefully for this. Clerk Fletcher, will you put this on the agenda for Monday, the 10th of August at 4 p.m. for everyone that's on this committee, the alternates, and anybody from? I think I see an assembly member on here too. So so that everyone has the chance, and the administration has the chance.
Yep, I can certainly make note of that, and we can get that out so that everybody knows.
Okay, that's great. All right, I think that's good. I know this is a short meeting, and that's my favorite kind. So if there's no other.
Oh, I was just going to say, everyone remember, I think 4 out of 5 of you, all of you actually have a meeting at 5, because I think Delegate Gallagher is an alternate for that. But, just letting you guys know, don't disappear too far.
Okay.
Yeah, but we have to log out and log back in again.
It's a different
Delegate
link,
Frizel. Deputy Speaker
Mr. Chair,
Frizel.
just a question. Do you think we ought to say for a different time and place for our committee to consider consolidation of the stabilization funds at this point, and not conflate it or add something to this
I-
resolution about that.
Yeah, I think that can be treated as a separate issue because
I think so. I
that
agree.
does not conflict with what we're doing all right now. But that's almost a different leg of this that we can consider at any point in time going forward. But
Okay.
it's a really and that, I really am glad you brought that up because I think that what you want to do is make it clear to our constituents what we have, where it is, and what we are doing with it. You know that
Right.
we answer to the voters, we answer to the
Right.
taxpayers and voters of Barnstable County. So if it adds clarity and doesn't detract from anything else, let's treat that separately but importantly going forward.
Okay,
All right,
okay.
that's what I think.
thank you.
With that, if I see no one else commenting, we'll see you on Monday, the 10th, in this venue, and I'll call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.